I left for 2 days, came back, and found a full-on wedding in my backyard, with Karen in a white dress standing under my gazebo, like she owned the roses. Karen hosted her wedding in my garden, so I installed motion-activated sprinklers. Part 1, The Stiletto and the Storm. I was mid-bite into a toasted bagel, humming along to some lo-fi jazz, flipping through an old gardening magazine, when I saw it, a stiletto heel, right in the middle of my petunias. I blinked, once, twice, and then I saw it all, a wedding arch, dead center in my backyard, folding chairs lined up in crooked rows, pink ribbons fluttering on every bush, confetti, actual confetti, tangled in my prized rosemary like botanical glitter bombs had gone off. But that wasn't the worst part. Oh no. A glittery sign, taped to my fence, read, "Happily ever after, Karen and Doug." That was the moment my bagel hit the floor, and my blood pressure hit the ceiling. I stood there frozen, unable to move, while my sanctuary, my one peaceful haven, had been turned into someone else's wedding venue. You see, I had retired early, moved to this sleepy neighborhood for the quiet, the calm, and I had poured years into this backyard. Trimmed hedges, blooming roses, a koi pond, a hand-built gazebo. It was my therapy, my meditation space, my private jungle paradise. Until Karen arrived. She moved in 3 months ago, and from day one, she came in hot, loud, theatrical, and carrying more unsolicited opinions than a daytime talk show. She called herself a community organizer, but what she really was a full-time nose poker with a clipboard. We met when she leaned over the fence in comically oversized sunglasses and said, "So, when are you joining the HOA committee?" When I told her I moved here specifically to avoid HOA drama, her smile twisted into something tighter than a zip tie. Over the weeks, she made odd little comments about my garden. Not compliments, just suggestions. You know, it's such a waste that no one gets married here. You should really open it up for community events. I'd laugh them off politely, assuming she was just chatty. Then she started inviting people over, giving them peeks through the fence, like my garden was some kind of local attraction. "Just imagine your wedding here," she said to one couple, while I stood there, stunned, holding a watering can like it was a weapon. But nothing prepared me for what I saw after my weekend trip. I had only been gone 2 days. When I left, my backyard was pristine. When I came back, it looked like Cupid had thrown a frat party and forgotten to clean up. Plastic champagne flutes scattered near the koi pond, a folding chair half sunken in the water, petals crushed into the lawn like they were trying to bury the evidence. And then, taped to my back door, a photo. Karen, in a blindingly white dress, grinning, arms wrapped around Doug, standing right under my gazebo. On the back of the photo, scribbled in bubbly handwriting, "Thanks for the space. You saved our big day, Kay." I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just throw myself into the koi pond. Even Steve, my cat, walked outside, sniffed a rose petal, and immediately threw up on it. I stormed inside, paced like a madman for an hour, and cycled through every possible reaction. A lawsuit, a flaming paper bag on her porch, or a very loud HOA hearing with visual aids. But then it hit me. I didn't need to be angry. I needed to be strategic, because sometimes revenge, when done properly, isn't just justice, it's art. Part 2, The Setup and the First Splash. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the living room with a mug of cold tea, replaying the scene over and over in my head. That photo, the confetti, The smug thank you note. Karen had turned my backyard into a wedding venue without asking, and somehow still had the audacity to act like I should be grateful. But gratitude wasn't on the menu. Retribution was. So the next morning, I did what any sane, non-violent, flower-loving homeowner would do. I went to the hardware store and bought 4 motion-activated sprinklers. The kid behind the counter asked if I had raccoons. I said, worse. I have Karens. I spent the next 5 hours in the dirt, digging, wiring, adjusting water pressure like I was prepping a tactical garden ambush. Each sprinkler was placed with surgical precision. They were sleek, hidden, and powerful enough to soak a grown adult in under 3 seconds. I tested them myself. The first spray knocked my baseball cap off. Perfect. Now I just had to wait. Karen, of course, had no idea what I'd installed. She thought I was just the grumpy neighbor who would mutter into his tea and clean up the petals quietly. But I wasn't cleaning anymore. I was arming the lawn. And Karen? She was already planning her next attack. She just didn't know the garden had turned into a trap. 2 days later, it happened. Late morning, birds chirping, sun shining, and there she was. Karen, lavender blouse, massive sunglasses, clipboard in one hand, iced latte in the other, and 3 brunch guests waddling behind her like overdressed ducklings. She was giving them a tour of my garden. Through the fence slats, I could hear her voice, nasal, high-pitched, overly rehearsed. Imagine a tea party right under that rose trellis. The light here is so flattering for photos. Her friends giggled. I stood behind the kitchen curtain sipping coffee, watching the screen like it was a nature documentary. Then one of them made the mistake. She stepped through the gate, just one polished heel on the grass. Fuss! The sprinkler blasted her full in the side of the head. Screaming, flailing. Her mimosa flew 10 feet into the koi pond. Karen ran to help, heels sinking in the lawn. Fuss! Another jet of icy water nailed her straight in the chest. Her sunglasses flew off. Her latte exploded against her blouse. She shrieked like someone had dumped a bucket of snakes on her. Her brunch friends ran. One slipped, another screamed. Someone yelled, "Oh my God, it's automated!" I took another sip of coffee and smiled. Later that afternoon, I received a letter. Pink stationery. Smelled like desperation and lavender. Karen was furious, claimed I had created an unsafe environment that caused emotional trauma to her guests. She demanded I remove the system. I didn't respond with anger. I responded with a photocopy of the trespassing laws, a screenshot of a government website approving sprinkler deterrents, and a thumb drive. On it, security footage of her brunch brigade breaching my fence and getting absolutely obliterated by my legal, city-compliant sprinkler system. At the bottom of the note, I simply wrote, "Next time, knock." Karen didn't respond, but the look she gave me at the mailbox the next morning, oh, it said everything. She wasn't done, but neither was I. Part 3. Viral Vengeance and the Return of the Queen. 3 days later, the neighborhood group chat exploded. A video, grainy, shaky, but crystal clear where it mattered. Karen, being taken out by a wall of sprinkler water, flailing like she'd been exorcised. Title: Entitled Bride Gets Baptized by Karma. Within an hour, it had over 12,000 views. By dinner, 50,000. By morning, half the town had seen it. Someone added music. Someone else edited in slow-mo replays. One person even cut in a voiceover of David Attenborough, narrating it like wildlife footage. And Karen was trending. She responded the only way she knew how. With a brunch. Another one. This time, a community healing gathering. She passed out pastel flyers at mailboxes, decorated her patio with fake vines, gave a 12-minute speech on forgiveness and understanding. And of course, she mentioned me, not by name, but with phrases like, "Not everyone appreciates beauty," and "Some people weaponize their landscaping." I didn't react, didn't post, didn't reply, because I knew something she didn't. Another video had just dropped. Part 2. Sprinkler. Guest. Faceplant. Title: Revenge Garden Episode 2. Karen's brunches were no longer exclusive. They were entertainment, and this time even her guests were laughing. Part 4. The press, the puddle, and the public humiliation. By the next weekend, Karen had a new plan, not to apologize, not to lay low, but to double down, in the most Karen way possible. She hosted what she called a neighborhood environmental awareness rally, complete with a podium, folding chairs, and a giant banner that read, "Save the wetlands, stop illegal water abuse." There are no wetlands in our neighborhood, and the only water issue around here was her getting blasted by my legally installed sprinklers. But logic never stopped Karen before. So there she was, in full lavender glory, heels on mulch, reading from a note card like she was accepting an Oscar. "I was assaulted by an unsanctioned irrigation system," she declared, voice trembling with manufactured grief. I watched from the kitchen window. Steve curled up next to the sink, like he was also over it. But the real show was about to begin, because Karen, always the drama queen, couldn't help herself. She stepped forward, just a few inches, just enough to cross onto my lawn. Fire! Direct hit. A fire hose blast straight to her designer blouse. She screamed, flailed, stumbled back into her podium, knocking over both houseplants she'd brought for decor. The mic short-circuited with a sharp crackle. Someone gasped. And then she slipped, right onto her backside, in the mud, arms out, skirt over her head. The silence was immediate, then broken by the sound of a single news cameraman chuckling. The clip hit the internet before Karen could towel off. Title: Sprinkler Bride Returns. This time it's personal. By sundown, it had gone viral. Again. Karen's press stunt had turned into a meme. The garden, a local legend. The HOA finally stepped in. An official letter went out to all residents, clarifying property boundaries, affirming sprinkler systems were allowed, and reminding everyone that trespassing is still illegal. Karen didn't mention the rally again, but the damage was done. Her guests stopped showing up. Her patio decorations wilted. Her voice, quieter than ever. She'd become a warning, a soggy, shrieking warning. That messing with someone's garden isn't just rude. It's risky. Part 5. The dinner, the downpour, and the final flop. I thought maybe, just maybe, Karen had learned. But no. The quiet was just her winding up, because the next weekend, she struck again. This time, it was dinner. A fancy, catered, HOA invitation-only dinner party. Set up right at the property line. White tablecloths, floral centerpieces. A string quartet playing Vivaldi like we lived in a Hallmark movie. And just over the fence, me. Watching with a lemonade in hand. And Steve asleep at my feet. She wasn't on my lawn this time. Yet. But the tension was marinating. Especially because she'd tampered with my sprinklers. Earlier that day, I'd noticed a suspicious teen lurking near my garden box. Said he was helping with the dinner. Turns out, he was trying to disable the system. He failed. He only managed to trigger a delay loop, meaning my sprinklers would now fire off every 90 seconds. Exactly. So just as Karen raised a glass to toast her guests, a sideways spray launched over the fence like a baptismal cannon. Napkins flew, wine glasses tipped. Someone yelled, "It's happening again!" Karen shrieked, dodging between arcing jets of water like she was in a Mission Impossible scene. And then, the grand finale. The teen, yes, the same one, tried to run over with a wrench to fix the issue. Karen spun to shout at him and slipped. Again. This time, right into the dessert table. She crashed into a tray of eclairs, face first, sending whipped cream flying like celebratory confetti. People gasped, then laughed. Someone filmed it. Of course they did. The HOA didn't say a word publicly, but days later, Karen's application to co-chair the landscaping committee was regretfully denied. The neighborhood couldn't stop chuckling. The sprinklers had spoken, and the garden stood undefeated. Part 6, the mud, the memo, and the moment she gave up the next morning. Karen's backyard was wrecked, tables tipped, grass churned to mud, half a tarp flapping like surrender. She stood outside, hose in one hand, broom in the other, staring at the disaster like she could will it back to elegance. But nature and humiliation had already done their job. I stayed quiet, just watered my roses. Steve sat proudly by the koi pond, tail flicking with judgment. Then, a new letter arrived, this time from the HOA, a neighborhood-wide memo. No names, but very clear. All event setups must remain within personal property lines. Sprinklers and other deterrents are not subject to community review if installed legally. Translation? Game over. Karen didn't speak to anyone that week. Her party guests stopped visiting. Her Instagram? Silent. And then, on Friday morning, a white SUV pulled into her driveway. Out stepped a man in a suit, clipboard in hand, followed by a contractor. An hour later, the for sale sign went up. No announcement, no farewell tour, just a silent retreat. Karen had officially surrendered. Part 7. The card, the committee, and the comeback I never wanted. 3 days after the sign went up, a card appeared in my mailbox. Pink envelope, floral trim, the kind you'd send for a retirement party or apology brunch. Inside was a short note. I hope you enjoy your peace now. I'm moving somewhere that appreciates shared space. Good luck with your hoses. Signed, Karen. I showed it to Steve. He sneezed on it. Fitting. I tossed it into the compost bin with zero hesitation. But the neighborhood? They noticed. The whisper chain was buzzing. The clipboard queen had finally been dethroned, and everyone wanted to talk about it. By the weekend, a new newsletter was delivered by the HOA. Standard stuff at first, until the final line. We're proud to welcome our new vice president for his quiet leadership, respectful boundaries, and contribution to sprinkler-based peacekeeping. That's right. They voted me in, without asking. Apparently, one too many people had seen the viral footage and decided I was the hero we didn't know we needed. I never planned to lead. But maybe, just maybe, someone who values silence and roses should have a seat at the table. Because peace takes watering, and sometimes just the right amount of pressure. Part 8. The legacy, the lawn, and the last laugh. Karen's house sat quiet for 3 weeks. Blinds closed, porch bare, her once bustling yard now lifeless. And then, the moving truck arrived. A single U-Haul, 2 guys with clipboards. No family send-off, no neighborhood wave. Just the sound of boxes and closure. Steve and I watched from the porch. I raised my mug in a silent toast. The next morning, a new couple moved in. Friendly, normal. The kind who knock, introduce themselves, and ask about trash day. I gave them the rundown, skipped the drama. But as I left, the husband chuckled and said, "So this is the place with the sprinkler legend?" I paused, smiled, and said, "Yup, but don't worry, they only activate when needed." That weekend, I hosted something rare, a garden tea for the neighbors. Not a rally, not a protest, just laughter, chairs under the gazebo, and lemonade clinking in real glass. Someone brought up Karen, and someone else asked if the sprinklers were still armed. I just grinned. "The garden defends itself," I said. "And Steve? Well, he rolled in the grass like a retired general. No more drama, just dew on the leaves. And a very well-watered peace." Epilogue. The award, the orchid, and the whisper of peace. A month passed. Karen's name faded like a chalk sketch in the rain. No more clips, no more drama, no more floral flyers blowing across my lawn like passive-aggressive tumbleweeds. The HOA meetings got shorter, the complaints fewer, the laughter warmer. One crisp Saturday, Ruth from the HOA board knocked on my door. She wasn't holding a clipboard. She was holding an orchid. Bright, unusual, and blooming like it had something to prove. "This is for you," she said.